Elijah, it is October, a month when film takes on a distinctly darker tone and enters into the genre of horror. As you probably know,
Yeah.
horror is my personal favorite genre, and from my understanding, it is something you are relatively unfamiliar about.
That is correct.
You know how I can tell this? Every time I bring up a scene from a horror film to compare when we're on set, your eyes kind of glaze over and you go into a deep sleep. Like I've once again started talking about a Kate Bush music video. So, I thought, why not take you on a tour through the horror genre? Some of these films you've probably seen, some you haven't, and some even I haven't. In fact, I've only seen 71% of what I'm coming up with here.
Gee, only 71?
I know, right? Anyways, I thought, why not start at the beginning? So we're going to move chronologically, tracking the history of every of the genre, one film at a time, traveling through what I believe to be the 101 essentials.
Mm.
This is your personal guide to horror. Tonight, we're gonna rewind the clock 109 years. Though not the first feature film, it was the first Italian feature, and to my knowledge, it is the oldest surviving feature ever. Could be wrong, don't know. It's also the oldest horror. This is where everything started. Today, you get to watch L'Inferno. Dante's Inferno took 3 years to make and was directed by 3 different Italian men. Though we could start with Milier stuff like The Haunted Castle and others, we're doing features here. So, are you ready to watch L'Inferno?
I was born ready, Darren.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, we've done it.
Yes, we have.
We've made it through probably the shortest of all these films I've selected.
Sweet.
Unsurprisingly. So, what did you think of Dante's Inferno from 1911?
I thought it was really impressive, to be honest. Just like the sheer amount of people involved and the commitment of those people involved was very high because you gotta be naked and roll around in gravel like with sharp rocks. So
Get rained on.
yeah, get rained on. So that was really good. I thought a lot of the effects were really impressive too. Like I would not know how those were done for like a good majority of them.
Yeah.
And as far as I can tell, it stayed pretty true to the original text of Dante's Inferno. I'd have to read it again, but
Yeah, they had all the 8th level has all those sub-levels,
Yeah.
which are like Baloney's, Balgio's,
yeah.
I forgot. Yeah, pretty interesting. How would you say, with your limited knowledge now, that this is either a big impact or a small impact
On what?
on film and horror?
Yeah. I think that this has a lot to, kind of sets a standard for a lot of horror. Now, if you include the audio, which I don't know when that was done, like how
Right,
after
because
the
we
fact.
watched the re-thrown together edition because I don't think original prints exist.
Right.
So I don't know if they dubbed that in later. I don't know if the weird like Penderecki score was part of the original, or
Right,
if that was part of the
'cause-
remaster.
Mm-hmm. Right, because if it was part of the original score, then that makes sense where a ton of movie scores come from.
Right.
Because it's all centered around noises and speech that's distorted and really like that makes you uncomfortable. I think that had a big impact on like film scores for horror movies. And then I thought that yeah, because it was so old and like used actual like celluloid and things like that, and like it was kind of jaggedy at some points. And I know that some filmmakers will intentionally do that nowadays to make a scene more uncomfortable and sporadic and things like that. So I think that definitely had an impact. Naked people's always scary, I think.
A lot of Holy Mountain comparisons to be made.
Yep.
Good, bad, who knows? It's
Exactly. So I guess that could have had an influence on feature films, but other than that, it's like just as like a first film, like that survived up until this point. Like, you know, you had multiple shots, multiple different colors of film. You had a ton of different actors and different sets that were built and things like that. So
Yeah, do you think the color is effective? Because if my knowledge is correct, that's not a remaster thing. Like they would have used different celluloid types.
yeah,
Because they do this later on. We'll see in our silent era. Black and white isn't really a thing till like mid-20s. Like actual
Right.
black and white, it's either sepia or the blue tones.
yeah, because I thought the colors were awesome because it like really helped you recognize when a transition happened. Since a lot of the sets sort of looked similar going through hell up until the very end, which was different. But yeah, since it's mainly just like rocky territory, the colors really help distinguish one level from the next, along with the different creatures and animals that came along with it.
Yeah, definitely. Not to set a precedent here, but this is also one I haven't seen, which, let's see, 101, 71% would mean what? 28 I haven't seen.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was interesting. It was a lot less engrossing than I thought it'd be. Because I think it felt kind of repetitive in a way.
Yeah.
As they just went through. And obviously that's how the book is to an extent, the poem.
Yeah, level by level.
I can definitely see huge influence on things going forward. I think this is one of the less interesting silent films I've seen, which might be age thing. They were still figuring it out back in 1911, which is crazy old.
Yeah. And like I was saying, like from that time, like I don't even know what kind of equipment they were working with.
Right.
Like it must have been just so bad. But
Right,
it
that's
turned
just-
out really good.
That's probably why it took like 3 years. They used a lot of milieu effects. You could see like superimposition. There was the giant where they didn't quite get it right. They tried to cut him out and paste him on a frame. And yeah, they used a lot of interesting tricks like double exposure. They did cuts for things. We were talking about that one hell area where the flames were coming out. There's probably like 2 shots kind of
Stitched
stitched.
together, right? That was awesome.
Yeah, what'd you think of the depiction of hell in this?
I thought like for the time it made sense, but I don't really think that like anyone can really get a good depiction of hell,
Right.
because no one really returns except Jesus. But yeah, like I thought for what it was, and like going off of the Dante's Inferno original text, like they did a really good job, and they stayed like with that whole like in the earth, under the earth kind of theme with the rocky territory going through hell. They nailed the cold aspect of the 9th level with the icicles at the end, and yeah, it was really interesting. I don't know, like maybe I expected like a more concrete ending because it seems like they just found the exit and then were walking and that was it.
Right, because what a lot of people don't understand is the Divine Comedy. It's 3 books, and
Right.
Inferno is just the first one, and that's the one everyone knows.
Yeah.
But there's 2 other parts of the story. This is just Act 1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seemed pretty theatrical to me also. Just in the movement of the main characters. It was all very big and like it was projected well with like certain arm gestures while they were saying lines. And I thought the makeup was really good, the costumes were really good. Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, the colors helped a lot and were pretty representative. And I thought like the remastered sound was really interesting.
Yeah.
That added a whole nother element.
It was a very unique soundtrack and dub track they had going.
Yeah.
It's I don't know if that was part of it or not because they have the Emperor speak at one point in Italian and he's like the only dubbed person.
Right.
Which again, I don't know if this is anachronistic or not, but it was really interesting how there were no intertitles.
Yeah.
There's no dialogue. Like it told us, oh, Dante's gone down here, but when people spoke, there's never any intertitles.
Right.
Which is something you see a lot in silent movies, unless it's Murnau, which was weird. I don't know if that's a remaster thing, if there ever were any. It didn't need it.
No.
You understood what was happening, I think.
Right.
Yeah, it's obviously been a while since either of us have read Dante's Inferno, but I think it was pretty accurate from what I remember.
Yeah.
Which was pretty much just the end.
Mm-hmm.
So, and someone we'll see probably come up a lot in horror movies is Satan.
Yeah.
What did you think of this movie's version
of Satan? I mean, yeah, they nailed him, chewing on Judas, basically.
Yep.
And yeah, like, I don't know if that's how I would imagine Satan to look personally. Part of me thinks like he might be like either indescribable in his natural form, but like could take on the form of many different things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, shapeshifter, he's appeared like in the Bible as many different things. So yeah, like I thought that interpretation was totally fine. And they nailed like the action of him. He was massive. He did have 6 wings in this film, which I'm not sure if Satan is defined as what's it called, a Sephirom?
Yeah.
Yeah, a 6-winged angel because he could be, and then that would be extremely accurate.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, most people say that he was the angel and then he fell.
Mm-hmm.
So he could have been.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if that's ever specified in any text, either Dante's Inferno or biblical or
right.
a Judean script of some kind. But.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it like exactly matters, because just one of the defining characteristics of Sephirom are 6 wings,
right?
Instead of just 2, which a lot of the other fallen angels had in this film. So.
Yeah,
and some didn't have wings at all too. Some just had the horns,
and that could have just been a budgetary thing,
right? And I don't know if horns are just something that people have thought up of, as what devils would have, but that's interesting. I don't know where that comes from, because if it does come from the Bible, I just haven't seen it. But
my understanding is it's a very kind of Renaissance thing where all these great painters like Michelangelo and people, just to differentiate between angels and devils in these battle portraits and stuff. I think that's where it came from. I could be wrong about that, but
that would make sense to me.
I don't think it's a traditional description.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's just something that people have made up as a descriptor, but that trend was carried on in this film. So
yeah, and historically it's interesting because this is an Italian film, obviously, from an Italian poet. Makes sense. but we won't see Italy pop up again for probably, what is this, 11, 30, 40 years going into these horror films, because Mussolini
Okay.
comes in and he bans film until he dies,
Nice.
which is quite a ways from now.
Yep. Thanks, Musso.
So it's pretty interesting to have this first horror film, this first existing film that I understand, be Italian.
Yeah.
The first featured documented, I want to say, is Australian, but I think it's lost or burned or whatever happens to all those old films.
Yeah.
So it's definitely interesting to take a look back. Do you see any political critiques going in here of maybe more modern society?
That's a good question. I think there might have been like political commentary for the time of Italy in 1911, but I would have to do like so much more research as far as like what the culture looked like then.
Right.
As far as modern society, I'm not really sure. I think like because you're just traveling through hell, and there are specific figures mentioned, like various popes, for example.
Yeah.
And we still have those in society today. And you know, not that every pope goes to hell, but possibly, like it's possible, depending on God's judgment. So, yeah, like you know, and a lot of people still believe in hell today. I certainly do, and that was a fine depiction of it. And there's many depictions of it, like in film, in literature, in art, that have just kept compiling up, and still people make it today. So
Right, because hell's been such this evolving concept over the years in terms of how we look at it and things.
Yeah.
And this is probably, I would say, the biggest influencer, not this film, but Dante's Divine Comedy.
yeah,
Because that's what everyone thinks of. They think of the fires. They think of there's 9 levels.
right.
Most people kind of neglect the frozen part, but lost in translation, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was interesting to see all that. I think the most interesting thing is you mentioned the popes in hell. Italy is obviously a very Catholic country.
right.
There's a country inside of Italy called Vatican City that you might know. So I find it very strange that this film is like, yep, we got a handful of popes down here in hell.
Right.
Which seems like a very like Protestant or maybe Lutheran idea that the Pope's taken kind of idolatry of kinds. It just seemed weird coming from Italy. I don't remember necessarily that being in the Divine Comedy.
Right.
Could have been.
Yeah, and if it was originally in a Divine Comedy, then good on them for sticking to that text,
Yeah.
regardless of what they thought. Now, if it wasn't, and it was just something that they did throw in there, then yeah, that's very interesting. Because of it being a Catholic dominated place, just being like, not even the popes are saved,
Yeah.
chief. Like.
And this is 1911, so to my knowledge, Vatican City isn't a country yet because Mussolini was the one who separated
Established
it.
Yeah.
So I think, not technically, but definitely for certain, the Pope's kind of in charge of Italy at this point.
Yeah.
So to get that passed through is pretty, I don't know.
Yeah, that definitely could have been a political commentary if like people were just not a fan of whoever was the Pope at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, like, these popes have gone to hell, and you're next. Like as I guess serious as that is, that definitely could have been the case.
Right. I think it's kind of interesting because the way I've always read Dante's Inferno, because it takes so many liberties with this idea of hell and things, is kind of as this almost propaganda piece. Like, you better behave. You don't want to end up down here getting chewed on. And I think this film did a good job adapting that aspect because it's
Yeah.
very extreme. Everyone's naked, they're getting beat up, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you rate this? Recommend it? Pass on it?
Um, I definitely rate it, and like pretty high to be honest. Like especially just for the time, like it was very impressive, and it still holds up today in some regard. Like if you think about, yeah, like things that we still do today practically, such as set design and costume
Right.
and different composition as far as framing and stuff. Like, yeah, this has a lot of great stuff in it, and I think because it's such an important piece of history, as like one of the oldest, if not the oldest, surviving film ever. Like, yeah, people should definitely like take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Now, I would definitely not show this to anybody who's under the age of 18
Yeah, I
because
think
there's
that's
too much nudity, but I don't like disagree with people being naked and being beaten to death like over and over again in hell, because I guess
Right.
you can't die in hell, you just get tortured.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I would rate it pretty high.
Uh, uh, I'm going to highlight some other features that we won't watch on here from this era as further listening here. I mentioned all the Millier haunted castle stuff. There's also a film from 1915, which might be on here, Der Golem, but it's lost. It's gonzo.
It's gone.
It's gonzo.
Dang.
So next time we come back here, we're gonna fast forward almost 10 years into the golden age of the silent films, and watch something even more influential.
Sweet. Looking forward to it.
Boom!